Skyscrapers, please forgive me. I didn't mean a word I said.
This is Rivet, and welcome to Architecture 360. I'm Lee Bay. The preservation group Landmarks Illinois has released its yearly list of the state's most endangered sites. A dozen items on this year's list, things like a vacant West Side mansion with a link to an historic murder case, one of the first, if not the first, air-conditioned movie theaters in the nation. Also making the call, the state agency in charge of overseeing landmark buildings. That could be lost as the governor's office swings the budget axe. Bonnie McDonald, president and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, stopped by Rivet Studios to talk about the list and what she hopes it'll accomplish. And our talk will continue on next week's show as we discuss more broadly the issues of preservation and urban development. But for now, the state's most endangered sites on Architecture 360. Bonnie, welcome to Architecture 360. It's always good to see you. Now, let's just jump in. One of the items on your endangered list is not a building or a site, but a state agency. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that would be our State Historic Preservation Office in Illinois. And for those who work in our industry, they know it as the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency. But what many people don't know is that the federal government mandates that each state in the nation has this, what we call a SHPO office. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the SHPO office is to ensure that we can manage our National Register of Historic Places program, our federal historic tax credit program, as well as our certified local governments, which come through the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grants. And this office is actually majority is paid by the federal government. And so as the governor has been looking at strategic cuts to balance the budget, unfortunately, in his fiscal year 15 and 16 budget, he zeroed out funding for our State Historic Preservation Office.
Now, the state is billions in the red, and this agency's budget is about $2 million?
But of that, $1.15 million comes from the federal government. The state pays $750,000. So $750,000, keep that number in mind. What the 14 people who manage the programs in this SHPO office did just in 2014, they managed $1 billion in economic activity coming into Illinois. And that is through our federal historic tax credit projects. So think the Wrigley Field, the Chicago Athletic Association, the Wrigley Building. All of those are using our federal historic tax credits to be a catalyst to get these developments done.
Now let's head out to Oregon County, Illinois. I didn't even know we had an Oregon County in Illinois. It's near the center of northern Illinois. There's a Laredo Taft sculpture in a state park, and it was created to honor the Black Hawk Native American nation, but it's in peril, right? I mean, not because of a lack of money to fix it up, but because of late paperwork? Tell me about that.
Right. So Lee, you and I have talked about the fact that we have not seen this statue, unfortunately, but this statue has received quite a bit of disinvestment under the care of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. So once again, back to our state government in this case, as they look for partners outside of state government to assist with the care of our historic sites and historic resources, there's been a group formed to raise funds to help the DNR save this statue, which 1911, by the way, is the date of this. And this small group, has raised almost $1 million on their own to restore the statue. And all that's holding it up is the paperwork at the Department of Natural Resources. And so it's been sitting at the DNR just to sign the paperwork to allow the grant to be spent on this state resource for a year.
But after Landmarks Illinois held a news conference, your group held a news conference announcing this and other endangered sites, something kind of miraculous happened, didn't it?
We learned right after the listing the next day that actually the paperwork is moving through the system.
Fancy now, that, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah, so we do not know whether that was happening the week of, because we actually do send a letter to the owners of all of the properties that are going to be listed, usually a week before the listing is announced, so that they are aware that we're going to be listing this, that it'll be gaining a great deal of public attention, and also to open that door forward to working with us and using our technical assistance to help them. The purpose of the list is to find a positive preservation solution, whatever that may be, and to be a part of the discussion.
Now let's move over to Chicago's West Side, where you found the Arnold Crow House, a faded beauty at 3329 West Washington. It's a nice piece of architecture, but one with not only one but two notable original owners.
That is right. Yes. The Arnold Crow Mansion, the Arnold comes from Adolph Arnold, who was the co-founder of the Schwinn Bicycle Company. But then after he left the home, Robert Crow was there, who was the attorney in the Leopold and Loeb trial. And that was a very important and famous trial in the 1920s. And if you're fans of Alfred Hitchcock, then you may know that the movie Rope was based on that Leopold and Loeb trial. Importantly, it has been vacant now for many years, and a local entrepreneur who had significant investment experience was trying to buy this home as his home. He wanted to invest in East Garfield Park. Unfortunately, he could not secure financing to do this. And because he could not secure the financing, the building has just remained vacant. So this important historic resource has sat there, a victim of the tragedy around the banking industry from the Great Recession. So here, the impact is essentially economic redlining in communities where our bank partners are not able to make the case from their own perspective to allow financing for those who want to take on vacant properties. I mean, these are, we call them zombie properties because they're just stuck in this limbo, in the foreclosure limbo, and they can't get out. And, the effect is declining property values in the entire neighborhood, which then means that somebody who owns the house there can't sell their house, can't even leave the neighborhood if they wanted to leave the neighborhood. So, economically, we need the bank industry to reevaluate its policies around lending in areas that were hit very hard by foreclosure.
Also, on the west side, we'll stay on the west side a little bit, the former Central Park Theater on Roosevelt Road, built in 1917. It's a church now, but it was among the city's first air-conditioned theaters, right? And kind of a prototype for the grand movie palaces that were built around town beginning in the 1920s, buildings like the Chicago Theater and others, right?
So this was the vision of Balaban and Katz, to create these movie palaces, these movie opera houses, essentially. And they turned to Rapp and Rapp, the firm of Rapp and Rapp, to do that. This was the first of those designs. And from it was really the legacy that spread across Chicago. If you think about the Uptown Theater, the Chicago Theater, the New Regal Theater, the Music Box Theater, these are all those atmospheric opera house theaters, and the genesis is here on Roosevelt Road.
So where do things stand now with the building?
The current situation around the Central Park Theater is very concerning because the House of Hope Church in Christ that has managed this building for, I think, the past 25 years has dwindled. The congregation has dwindled down to, I think, 24 people at this point. And if you can imagine, trying to raise funds from 24 people to put in the investment that a large theater needs. This is a 1,780 seat theater.
Wow.
So imagine trying to raise the funds. It is just nearly impossible.
That's Bonnie McDonald, President and CEO of Landmarks Illinois. Bonnie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lee.
And thank you, too, for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of my conversation with Bonnie. Until then, this has been Architecture 360. I'm Lee Bay.